All right, welcome to another video segment for the Always Next Year podcast. Shane here with Rob. We were going to do this a little bit earlier. Rob was on a train or in Starbucks, whatever. Connection was bad, and it was a good thing. We just watched the Flyers lose in overtime. But we're
Fucking
going
shootouts, man.
to posts, man. They just not working out in Philadelphia Flyers' favor ever. But NBA trade deadline passed today. We're going to focus on for this segment anyway. We're going to focus on Elton Brand and why he is the executive of the year for the NBA. No, all kidding aside, the 76ers made a couple big roster shakeups. And we'll jump right into it. The first one, it happened overnight. I think you were still awake for it. I was not. I woke
I
up.
was. Yes, I was.
So I woke up to all the alerts and texts. But 76ers went out and acquired Tobias. We got rid of Muscala, which I could not be more pleased with. He is a basketball player. We got rid of Wilson Chandler, who it's a shame he just never really worked. He couldn't really get healthy. He wasn't that gritty, well-rounded player that we've come to know from him. So I was cool with obviously shipping out that contract. The Miami pick, and then 2 second-rounders. We also got Philly's new superhero, Bobbin, how we're going to say his name.
Yep, 7'3", married to a smoking hot girl.
Is he? Good for him.
Yeah.
Of course.
Look at his Instagram. He's got a gorgeous wife.
Good for him. Good for him. And then Mike Scott, who is owning press conferences and interviews at this rate with his I don't think the guy's ever spoken in his life. He just sits there and says he doesn't give a shit about anything. He just wants to win, which is basically his actual quote. So I love every ounce of this first move. Give me your thoughts on the Tobias move and what you saw since you were awake at 1:30, 1:40 in the morning when it happened.
I mean, I love it. I love it. I was a big Landry Shamet fan, so I'm kind of disappointed to part ways with him. But Tobias Harris is a really good basketball player. I think he should have been an all-star this year. He was pretty close to making it in terms of the fan vote. I don't think he missed by that much. But he's had a few seasons where he really should have been an all-star and didn't get the enough love to get into the game. So he's a pretty solid basketball player. He's a stretch four that they need. Much more effective than Wilson Chandler, who had no business being in our starting lineup. So I'm really excited to see what this team can do with Tobias Harris at the 4.
Yeah, same. He adds an element that that we did lack a lot. He's a great shooter. His defense is a little suspect.
42%, I believe, from 3-point land.
Sounds right. I didn't look up his stats, or his percentages, but he adds another shooting threat. That we just don't really have. Jimmy Butler's about the only one that can create his own shot from anywhere on the floor. We now have another one. And Tobias, his spot up jumper is lethal. He's one of the better shooters in all of the league. So, he kind of fits right into what the 76ers desperately needed from their starting lineup for one, but especially for Brett Brown with his rotations. I think that, and I'm actually going to take a different stance now than what I had taken initially, and for each one of our trade talk segments prior to this. I wasn't on board with let's go get another star, let's go get another big piece. I just thought that it was going to stylistically clash, and I didn't think that was going to help. I thought we needed those bench pieces. Now we are short-ish on the bench, but I think a move like this inevitably keeps at least 2 of these people on the floor at all times. What do you think that the Tobias addition is going to do for and Bowen? What do you think that those 2 pieces for Brett Brown are going to do going forward in terms of how he splits up that time? Are we less likely to see 20-point leads squandered?
I think so. I think that Boban gives us some defensive skill from the bench that we definitely needed. Somebody can come in and give Embiid a blow when they're up by 20 points. He's not going to score a lot of points, but he can he's 7'3", so he's as good a rim protector as there's going to be in the NBA just because of his size. And that's definitely going to add something. Like you said, Tobias Harris, not really known for his defense, but I haven't heard any real bad remarks about it either. So
No.
really kind of remains to be seen there. But just adding those guys, it gives them so much more flexibility.
Yeah, I agree. In moving with Scala, I constantly found him a second half liability. While he did occasionally step into, where you going, man? You got slanted ceilings. You must make women.
I just got to close the door.
Gotcha. Well done. Also, dig the sign behind the bed, by the way. Very appropriate. But it did continue to Scala a complete liability in the second half. And I felt like out of necessity, Brett Brown had to go to him more often, especially with as infrequently as Wilson Chandler was able to stay in the lineup and stay in those rotations with his health. So I think that it's addition by subtraction with him at this point. I couldn't be more pleased to see Muscala out of the 76ers rotation and out of that building.
Tell it to my buddy Alex.
I know.
Biggest Muscala fan I've ever met in my life.
He's an everybody fan that puts on that 76ers uniform besides Ben Simmons, which is hilarious. Ben Simmons.
Alex, if you're watching this, we still love you, man, but stop hating on Ben.
I also love you. I met you one time, but you're a good dude. Good enough. Let's talk about Landry Shamet real quick. So Brett Brown, he hit so well in his draft move to select Landry late in that first round. I think he was 26th or 27th overall. He worked his way into becoming a sixth, seventh guy for us. He was a sharpshooter. He was able to come in and basically be what J.J. Redick, in theory, should be. But Redick's played well enough to keep himself into starting rotations. I find it difficult right now that the lasting memory of him was a horrifically bad blown call on that three ball. Did you happen to see that during the game?
I was not able to watch the game. I was out of town, but I did hear about it. But my last memory of Landry Shamet is a chase down block and then the 4-point play in that one series against Golden State. So mine's a little bit more
positive,
better than yours.
Whole point being with Landry Shamet, unfortunately you have to move pieces to get pieces. And while I don't think that he was ever going to be a superstar, what he provided to especially these home games, he was a bit of an energy boost and a lift. He was certainly a crowd favorite here. So that's kind of tough to see him go.
I think you said it well. A kind of a younger version of J.J. Redick, the way that he plays. Defense isn't great, but he makes plays, every so often. Great spot up shooter. Can hit those. Really specializes in hitting the 3-pointers. It's really the biggest part of his game. So kind of, like a young JJ.
A little bit, but they're getting a good one. So, moving on to the trade that really, look, today, I don't know about you. I refreshed Twitter all day today between the NBA deadline.
You're just looking for Bryce Harper news.
I'm always looking for Bryce Harper news. That's 100% correct. But there was so much going on, right? With Philadelphia sports and just sports in general. I couldn't stop refreshing Twitter. It was a problem. But it was about, I want to say 2:10, something like that. And I'm sitting there, I'm counting down the minutes. I'm like, how the hell is Markelle Fultz still on this roster right now? It didn't make sense financially for me to sit there and to hang on to a guy who, I've been pretty open about this. I still think Markelle Fultz is going to be a really good NBA player. But it doesn't make financial sense with the acquisition of Tobias to have to pay Tobias, Jimmy Butler, and Ben Simmons, you kind of financially needed to move on from Markelle Fultz. 5-10 minutes later, Twitter explodes, the universe fucking explodes, and Markelle
I was
Fultz.
so fucking happy.
You're not a pro Fultz.
I am not a pro Fultz guy.
We
So
are
I was driving home from work, right? And I was kind of driving through like a wooded area on a back road, and the radio is kind of breaking up a little bit, but I could hear them well enough to hear them break the news that Markelle Fultz been traded. And I just about damn stopped my car and got out and ran down the fucking road celebrating. I didn't, but I was feeling it.
I had very dissimilar reaction. I was just sitting there, and I had to search through Twitter, and I had needed to confirm it by reading hundreds of goodbye Markelle Fultz tweets by blue checkmark people and non-blue checkmark people. I didn't give a damn. I just wasn't ready to believe it yet, as I was sitting here saying, like, damn, I know financially we needed to move on from this cat, but
I'm just so happy we don't have to hear that damn name Raymond Brothers ever again.
yeah, well, you know what, him and I really got to stop setting alarms on my phone for shit that doesn't matter, because that is a
Is that your alarm to check Twitter for another Bryce update?
No. That one actually, I have a chip in my arm. It just zaps me, just to keep me alert and sharp. But but yeah, the Markelle Fultz thing, it's a shame. It truly did become a saga. And it was bad for the 76ers. It was bad for, an 18, 19-year-old kid in Markelle Fultz. But he gets the opportunity to kind of restart. You don't ever have to hear Raymond Brothers' name again, theoretically. No one ever has to deal with Markelle Fultz's insane, overly protective mother, which is, look, that's a problem in of itself. You gotta cut the cord at some point, kid. But Orlando gets him. We get back in the deal Jonathan Simmons, an OKC pretty protected first round pick.
It's not gonna matter. It's not gonna fall within the protection range anyway.
Yeah. So and then a 2019, I think it's a second round pick, the second pick there. But look, we didn't give him away for free. It'll be a late first round pick when we get it, and we were able to take Furkan a couple of years ago. We took Landry last year. So we've shown the ability to hit kind of late in the first round. And going forward, we're going to have to hit late in first rounds now, because we should theoretically be a very good basketball team for the next 5 to 10 years. But I keep sitting down here, by the way, and I'm looking at some of these notes on some of the trades that I have. But below all the 76ers shit is just JT Real Muto, and it says, bring Bryce to fucking Philadelphia. I just keep looking down, overly excited, being like, God, I can't wait to talk about that.
You're itching to get to that segment, I can tell.
I am. Maybe so I can cut the fucking chip out of my arm that zaps the shit out of me for any type of news. But let's talk finance now for the 76ers. It's a difficult thing to sit there and manage the egos of superstars and star players. And I think in particular in the NBA, these guys have more control over everything than in any sport or any of the big four sports. And having to manage, we've texted about it, vastly different egos and vastly different personalities. You have a very passive, kind of quiet Ben Simmons. You have your fuck you guy in Jimmy Butler, which I love. You've just acquired Tobias, who's kind of just look, we don't know yet, but from everything that that we've kind of outside looking in on him, have been able to grasp, is that he's kind of a no nonsense guy. He just wants to come in, he wants to win, he wants to do what he needs to do. He definitely benefited from being basically the only option, this year on his roster. And then you have Joel Embiid, who's still maturing, and he's
a goofball, but kind of a wild card.
Yeah, he's kind of out there, and he's the only one who's paid and locked up at this point. So we're going to have to find the money and the sales pitch to sit there and say, look, Tobias, Jimmy, and Ben, we want to keep. We've already seen the reports that Elton Brand and the 76ers want and envision all four of them here next year and going forward. But some guys are going to take discounts based on what they believed they were probably going to be getting, and namely Jimmy Butler. I think Tobias would probably be a little more accepting of, I don't want to say a discount, but I don't think that he's going to push for a max if we don't give it to him.
Well, Tobias would be the cheapest of those four guys to keep around,
certainly,
without a doubt. Just because he's never played in an All-Star game, despite the fact that like I said, he's deserved to be in a few of them.
He is an All-Star. It's his numbers are certainly top 15, top 20 on either side. But to me, the hardest part about all of this, and it's the one that's so often put up in the air, Philadelphia is so split on Ben Simmons. But finding the value in his contract and what he is going to want and demand, I think it's pretty clear, and I think it always has been, that his desire was to be West Coast, was to be in LA. I think that given first opportunity he gets to play with LeBron, before LeBron's done, if he has the ability to force his way there, I think he's going to do so. So I think you're going to have to give, Simmons the max.
I don't know if you saw it, and I don't know how much to read into it, but LeBron traded for Simmons on his All-Star team today.
Fuck it. I don't care about the NBA All-Star or anything. But look,
I mean, we know the two of them have a relationship. They have the same agent. They work out together, that kind of deal. They're good friends.
But LeBron, and I know you watch this shit, man. If you wanted to play with Ben Simmons so bad, you're right here. Philly was right here. You wanted to go to LA and deal with Lonzo Ball and his psycho dad. Do what you want to do.
If he came to Philly, he'd be more than a game above 500 right now.
It's true, although.
But they lose by like 42 points the other night.
Was LeBron even back? I don't think he was back yet.
I thought he played in that game. I thought LeBron came back like a week or so ago.
Yeah, well,
I don't know if he played last night though, or whatever game that was.
The team's a goddamn train wreck. They shouldn't be, but granted, LeBron did miss 17 games, 18 games, something like that. It's ridiculous.
Now they're just getting fucked with by the Pelicans GM, which is pretty hilarious.
Dude, so petty, so goddamn petty. Which, look, man, I sincerely hope this comes back to bite that guy in the ass. At a certain point, you know this man doesn't want to play for you. You know he wants to leave. I said NBA players have entirely too much, power and too much say in everything that goes on. But, and I should be saying, yeah, good for you. Stick it to your guy. You're paying him. Fucking make him fill out the contract. No, man. I saw the offers. If the offers were even remotely true, fucking take it. I don't know what the hell was going on, but regardless, so we've seen the completion of some of these deals, and moving forward in the East, we also Boston didn't do anything great, but Toronto did.
They got Gasol.
What's up?
They got Gasol.
Yes, and shipped out the only guy who's been able to figure out Joel Embiid. So I now, for whatever reason, no longer fear Toronto. I know that the other night, when we recorded, and we'll put those segments out soon. But I know the other night, I said that that's certainly still a team that I fear most. But they shipped them out, and they brought in Marc Gasol, and I don't give a damn anymore. So good for you, Toronto, for doing Toronto things.
Marc Gasol, you got to remember, he's 34 years old. So what he has left in the tank this year, he's probably not going to be the same guy next year. I mean, you reach that point in your mid-30s, you start to hit a decline, usually pretty rapidly. So if they're hoping to get anything out of Gasol, they're going to be hoping it all comes this year and it pushes them to a championship. Otherwise, that trade's not worth it for him.
I'm cool with Toronto doing Toronto things, man. But it brings me to the last point here before we, jump to some Philly stuff in another segment. Our starting lineup now is going to, account for, if they hit their averages, I think it's like 107 or 111 points a night, just from our 5 starters. do you view us any more or less elite for going into the playoffs? Looking at all the moves that have happened today, and yesterday, um, how far do you think the 76ers team can go today versus what they were before they moved on from Fultz and before they acquired Tobias?
Well, before the deadline or before these recent trades, I thought they were a conference finals team. Right now, I think they should. Well, actually, I said in our last Sixers segment that I think that they should be going to the NBA Finals, and I'll stick to that. I'd say I'd be happy if they go to the finals. Originally, I thought maybe they'd go and say face Golden State, maybe win one game. Now I think they could potentially win two or three. I don't know if they would win the series, but it would definitely be a much more intriguing matchup.
So you don't fear Milwaukee at all. You don't fear Boston. You don't fear Toronto.
Those teams are having really nice regular seasons, and there's no doubt that they have a lot of talent on their roster. But I think that come this postseason, especially now that they have some playoff experience from last year under their belt, the Sixers' star power is just going to be too much. I mean, we have three guys, actually four guys who have all-star potential in our starting lineup. We have one guy who's an MVP candidate. We have another guy who, if he gets a jump shot, is the top 5 player in the NBA. So, I mean, the star power that the Sixers have is not matched by anybody in the Eastern Conference. The other teams, Toronto, Milwaukee, Boston, they might be deeper. They might have more depth that their bench can do more for them. But the starters, as far as that goes, the Sixers have a pretty decided advantage there.
Yeah, I think the way that Brown has kind of managed the minutes and workloads of guys to this point, and I said it on the podcast the other night. It's kind of set them up for to add some minutes, to the back end here, to kind of push you through the last few months of the season. And I think that we'll have a pretty short playoff bench or playoff rotation, and I don't think it's going to matter. I think these guys are certainly ready to handle that.
Most teams go with a relatively short rotation in the playoffs, though. It wouldn't just be the Sixers. Most other teams do it.
But I think that you're going to be looking at 7 and 8 guys, as opposed to getting to that 10, 11, and well, almost no one gets it, beyond that. But it wouldn't surprise me if almost every one of those starters are 33 to 36 minutes a night. And I think Ben Simmons, if he can play 40 plus, I think he's going to play it. I think Jimmy Butler, if he can play 40 plus, he's going to play it. I think those are the two guys. But before we sign off for the 76ers segment, we'll bring it back with a fresh segment here for the Philadelphia Phillies in that trade today. You have any final thoughts, just on today's moves on Markelle Fultz or Tobias Harris earlier in the week, or Executive of the Year, Elton Brand?
Well, you pretty much said it right there. Executive of the Year. Really happy with what he's been able to do these past couple of days. I think he's pushed the Sixers from being an Eastern Conference contender to being an NBA champion contender. He's really done a nice job, especially. I think it was huge to get rid of the headache that Markelle Fultz caused. I mean, I think he's a talented basketball player, but just too much off the court to deal with, and that's going to be a load off their shoulders as they hit the stretch run in the playoffs to not have to worry about that.
Yeah, you know what, I agree. My final thought will also kind of echo some of the Markelle Fultz stuff. Me coming from I was a pro Markelle guy. And I kept thinking that if he was able to sit there and figure it out, I think he's going to be an extremely productive and talented NBA player. I think going somewhere like Orlando right now is probably pretty good for him. It'll allow him to kind of rebuild and regain some of his confidence and tools, and see if he can't put together a second half of the season if he's healthy from his TOS.
He'll be playing somewhere where there's no pressure to win either.
Exactly. So tough that you have to move on, a year or 2 years removed from a number 1 overall pick. But again, it's a necessary thing. And I think that the bigger picture right now is something that Elton Brand understands, on a far deeper level than what I think you could have expected from a first-year GM. So I'm pleasantly surprised with what he has been able to do, and with cutting ties with some guys who I'm sure are probably pretty tough to cut ties with. So very impressive from Elton Brand. But that'll wrap up the Sixers one. Like I said, we're going to come back, and we'll have a second segment here on the Real Muto trade. Sorry, I looked down and saw sign. I just keep looking at it. My arm gets zapped. But yeah, we'll be back in just a minute.